Hello, pod smashers of the internet, and welcome to another episode of
Itty bitty pod smash.
Where Gaming Goes to Grab a Beer.
Tank. Ooh. Something
Or a
about
bourbon.
what sound you just made. It sounded like a fart. It sounded like you
Nope,
just held
that was
the
definitely
mic
pulling the
up to
cork
your
out of a
butt.
bourbon bottle.
It sounded like that by the end of the sound, but the first thing I heard was like a...
Oh, that was
like a-
you have to, it's like a synthetic cork. It's like the plastic one that you have to,
yeah.
I had to twist it to get a grip before I could just pull it. And
Gotcha.
Yep, this is a family-friendly podcast.
We are your hosts, Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right. And tonight we are doing a topic that has been on my mind for a long time. It's something I'm very passionate about. But this is an episode for both the gamers who follow us probably, and the non-gamers who I really hope follow us or start following us after listening to this series of episodes. But we're doing for the month of June. I recognize it's May 31st when this episode comes out, but it's so close to June that we're counting as June. For the month of
might as
June,
well.
we're doing a series for non-gamers, for people who say, I don't identify as a gamer, I don't even like video games, or don't think I like video games, as we'll talk about in the episode. But this is for you guys. This whole series is for
and
you guys.
maybe parents want to know more about what video games are these days, because the landscape has changed and
Right.
drastically in the last 30 or 40 years, and want to know what does gaming look like for your family and for
what
your kids.
value,
Yeah.
what value does it have now,
Yep.
and how has that changed? And we're here to convince you that it has. So, Yep, that's what we're going to do tonight. We'll get more into it. Obviously, we don't want to, give away all of our cards yet, because instead we like to take some time to do some fun things first. And one of those fun things is talking about what beer we're drinking tonight, because we're gaming. Let's grab a beer.
Or some cases, a bourbon, or maybe we
For
did
the
wine
last
once.
several weeks you did. I think we did coffee one time. Didn't we record early in the morning once, and we're like, coffee.
Yeah. The reason why I've been doing bourbon is because I actually don't have beer, but I have so much other alcohol. I feel stupid buying more beer.
Yeah.
So I'm just I'm going to drink this bourbon that, if you recall in previous episodes, I talked about the Virginia ABC store having these Facebook drops where they tell exactly which stores have rarer stuff.
Right.
And I had Blanton's for that episode. I still have that bottle here. It's not done yet. But I also picked up a bottle of this one I'm drinking tonight, and that is Buffalo Trace. And they are from the same distillery, but they're two different types of bourbon. This thing has a laundry of things to read on the back. So I don't think I want to read the entire thing. It's a lot, but it's the very first bourbon created at the Buffalo Trace distillery. That's what I'm drinking. Traditionally handcrafted, Buffalo Trace has a smooth, confident taste that invites discovery with every sip. Explore Buffalo Trace and taste the spirit of legends. And it is almost one of my favorite bourbons. It's really, really good, but also super hard to find.
Almost,
in Virginia,
why don't you say one of your favorites, right? It's one of my favorites. You're not committing it to being your favorite.
Right. No, I think my favorite is Blanton.
Great. You can still say Buffalo Trace is one of my favorites. You're it's almost one of my favorites, but it just didn't make the list.
Yeah. Well, there's good bourbons
That's a
out
funny
there.
way. That's a funny way to word things. I really want to use that now, right? It's almost one of my favorites, but it just didn't quite make it.
Didn't quite make it.
You're almost one of my favorite people.
Oh gosh, now we're getting dark. That's awful.
All right, cool. I'm drinking Alpine Lager, Sam Adams Alpine Lager. It's not my favorite Sam Adams. I used to scoff at Sam Adams because they were clearly, Anheuser-Busch, and I know they are effectively a microbrewery in and of themselves. But there was a long time where they were one of the first ones that really was nationwide, and so it was it seemed like they were pretending, right? There was sort of that, but genuinely, I've grown fond of them. They make good beer. And again, the beer landscape has changed a lot since Sam Adams started distributing nationally.
Yep.
And so I've come to appreciate Sam Adams' consistency over certain microbreweries or
for sure,
craft breweries where it's wildly inconsistent. So, but that said, Alpine, it's fine. It tastes like a Sam Adams, right? It tastes more like just a regular Sam Adams as opposed to Cold Snap, which I was blown away how good it was, and Oktoberfest, which of course is a staple, awesome beer. Yeah, I'm it's okay. It's okay. That's all I gotta say about it. It's good.
Alpine Lager.
All right. Well, is there anything you wanted to chat about before we get started? There's something.
Yeah, I do want to chat about this. Something that it's like a favorite thing, which we'll get into in our show, is a segment of something that we're digging. But this is not a favorite thing for me, but I'm taking a lot of joy in doing this. And I have some neighbors that came down with COVID, and they live in the same. It's instead of a single family home, it's actually like a duplex. So that both families ended up with COVID, and between the two families, there's 3 children, 4 adults, and they're all like isolated and just stuck inside. Kids can't go to school. It's my life from January, but they're going through it now. So I'm like super sympathetic to them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, This is rough. You're going through a hard spot. So I wanted to hook up my old PlayStation 4 and do the system updates anyway, like the launch model PS4. And so I did that. I installed Spider-Man, and one of the guys that lives over there is like a Marvel fan. Like, he read comics, he knows movies, like he loves Marvel, and he also loves Spider-Man. It might be his favorite superhero like mine. So I had the great joy of walking my PlayStation 4 down and loaning a copy of all of that for him to play, because he didn't have a PlayStation but expressed interest in wanting to play Spider-Man. And since Spider-Man was it like the audience's voted #1 PlayStation 4 game from the Sacred Symbols 200 that we went to? I'm not sure, but it's
no, it was Red Dead Redemption. You have a bad memory.
No. Red Dead Redemption was the one that won from all 3, like 4 different lists. But the audience specific list, I think Spider-Man.
I'm pretty sure it was God of War.
Okay, well,
yeah,
Spider-Man was way up there. Sorry. I know it was way up there.
It was absolutely way up there. You're right.
Such a great game. Insomniac, they just brought it, and Spider-Man's amazing, and it's a great experience. So I wanted him to have something to kind of decompress with, something new to enjoy in his isolation with COVID and his family at home. So it's family friendly too. His son is 9, so they're perfect age for Spider-Man content. And I'm just like, I'm getting text messages from him as he's hitting certain story beats, and it's awesome to be like, yes, someone, like, I'm living vicariously, we always wish that we could like erase our experience with a video game so that we can re-experience it as it's new again. And I'm kind of doing that vicariously through him, and it's been awesome. So I wanted to rant about that I've enjoyed loaning off Spider-Man, which is a video game related topic. It's related to tonight as to what, benefits of gaming are. So there it is. That's it. Just ranting about that.
No, that's good. That's a heartwarming story. I was, of course, going to talk about something critical, which was the Activision thing, the Activision diversity inclusion tool or whatever that breaks down your that starts with straight white male and then assigns number values to anything not that as you craft a character and build it for the optimal diversity score. It's like, it's a thing. Yeah, for those who may not know, this would be news like 2 weeks ago at this point. But it's they this week that we're recording this, they announced that they're launching this thing, and the internet has rightly lambasted them because it's like, okay, so the company that like sexually harasses its workforce is now all like, here's our awesome diversity tool that we use to make diverse characters, as opposed to, I don't know, hiring diverse people to make their games. Like, right. It's an actually kind of disgusting and terrifying thing that they're doing. I mean, maybe not as far as disgusting, but certainly like tone deaf and stupid. But it's funny how the internet's reacted. Like, funny how the internet has properly reacted to completely just like putting down their just corporate America response, right? It's just so corporate America. It's such like a capitalist mentality of like, oh no, people are complaining there's not enough diversity in our games. Let's do the wrong thing. Let's do not the thing they're saying that's actually smart, and instead let's do and not just smart, but like moral, ethical. And instead let's just do the like, can we break this down into an algorithm? And it just seems to be like modern corporate America response to everything. Can we algorithmize this?
It's so ridiculous. It's like, if you want to fix the long term, like, this is such a band-aid, right? We want diversity in the decision room, in the room where it happens. Yes, Hamilton, you want to be there. We want diversity there. You hire the diverse developers, the diverse CEOs, and you get what you're looking for from a genuine perspective, from life, from art, from creativity, not some manufactured tool that on the other, it's so
manufactured tool probably describes the person who came up with it.
Hey, probably. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
Yep.
Yeah. Ridiculous. Whatever. I don't have any expectations anymore for them. Right. Like, this is what I've come to expect from that company. and to an even greater level, this is just what I've come to expect from business, like corporations, right? It is what it is, and I don't have to buy their games. I have no desire to buy their games. None of their games look appealing to me, which just speaks to the state of their business. And yeah,
Yep.
I'm happy to support the businesses so far that I like, and just am crossing my fingers they don't. They're skeletons. No,
Yeah.
I hope their skeletons come out, right? I want evil and wrongdoing to be exposed. I just genuinely hope they don't have skeletons in their closet.
Yep.
So there we are. That's all I wanted to talk a little bit about. I think we can move on. Corporate America isn't our favorite thing, but taking care of our neighbors during tough times may be our favorite thing. But also,
80-bit pod smash is our favorite thing.
80-bit pod smash is our favorite thing. You went really deep there, and I was like, I have to go deep.
I didn't know what you were gonna do. It was like throwing some,
Maybe I should have gone high and been like,
yeah. That's what I did. I didn't know what to expect, so I just went with it because I was trying to have fun here.
That's fine. We are having fun. This is fun. So far, it's been fun. Yeah, the favorite things is a time where we get to share something we're excited about, something we are digging, as something that we discovered or rediscovered, or something that intrigued us or inspired us, in hopes that you go out and try to find your next favorite thing. I'll start. My favorite thing is
Do it.
I finally sprung for a Boomstand.
Yes,
That's what it's called.
I wanted to ask you about that before we started recording to see how this is going.
All up in my face right now.
Nice.
It is. So I still have the mic that's not omnidirectional. I think that's going to be my next investment. Is a proper omnidirectional mic. That's way more of an investment than a $13 Boomstand. But I'm so glad that I've done it, because it does feel I can lean back. I spent so much time recording podcasts leaning forwards,
right?
And I can't imagine it didn't affect the quality of the podcast. Meaning, like I don't know, maybe it was stressing me out, right? Like putting physical stress on my body. Whereas right now I'm like leaning back, I feel relaxed, and still don't feel like my voice isn't, like I feel like my voice is being picked up. I guess we'll find out in the final cut, right? The final quality.
Sounds fine to me so far, yeah. There's a thing in the audio industry called like mic discipline, where you're supposed to have your mouth like 2 fingers away from the mic. And if you don't have a boom stand putting the microphone that close to your face, it is awful to try and move your body to make that happen from like a desk stand. And so I had the exact same experience when I moved here. I got a boom mic, and I was just blown away because like you're hunched over, your lungs are kind of collapsed, your back is sore, it's just like when you can sit straight up and you're more upright, or you're laid back, maybe you have your hands above your head folded, or however you want to do it. Like you're just more open, you're more present, you're more comfortable, and that's going to come through. For sure. That's going to come through in your tone, in your cadence, in your energy levels. Like all of that comes out, and it's such a minor change, but it's huge.
It is huge, and I had a come to Jesus moment. I think I don't remember. Maybe it was you who said it and put the idea in my head. Yeah, it was you. You said it. I don't remember what the context was, if it was D&D or if it was podcast. But nonetheless, I took a look at my circumstances. And now that I'm doing D&D more and plan to keep doing that and do it from the computer with a microphone, with a camera, I was like, yeah, between that and I'm doing a live stream. It's called Advantage or Die. I'll be making content with a group of other people. Don't worry, it's not going to interfere with the podcast at all. But it's a D&D live stream where I will be a player character instead of a DM. But it's my effort to try to learn the player experience more, and then also kind of learn from observation. So Advantage or Die, check it out. I'm going to be playing a bard named Helix Doomsonnet, and I'm going to be hilarious. Yeah, that's all. All of my improv, performative talents that I let kind of slip here and there on this show, they'll be like in the forefront. So hopefully it'll be fun for people to watch. So I highly recommend people tuning in. It'll be Tuesday nights. So on the weeks that we do our Wednesday live streams, it'll be busy for me, right? It'll be like record the podcast Monday, do the live stream Wednesday, and in between I'll be doing the D&D live stream. So anyways, but I was like, between that and also, my private DM games that I'm running, I was like, I'm going to be in front of the computer on a microphone a lot over the next few months. Let's set it up to be a lot more comfortable so I'm not killing my body every time.
I think I did do that to you. It was because the camera was turned on for our D&D and I could see you physically. Yeah. And there was something, I don't know what you were doing. I was like, you just look so uncomfortable. Have you ever thought about a boom stand? Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, and then I looked it up and I was like, that's $13. I can afford
they're so cheap.
Yeah. Easy. Yeah.
Yep.
So it worked right. I mean, it was easy to set up. I had to kind of play with it to find out where I wanted it. I had to also worry about a camera, right? And so I didn't want the mic covering up my face.
Right.
But so the position.
And you don't want the mic in front of your eyes blocking your screens either.
Exactly. And I didn't want, the other complication was I didn't want it to have to fight my monitors for space too. So I want it to be like clear the monitors. But then I also have my TV up there. I was like, I haven't been playing a lot of PlayStation 4 for my office recently. But if I do, I don't want like a bended mic blocking my view of that either. So I finally found a spot. It's going to be a pain. I'll have to like take it down when guests are here if I want to like roll the roll top down. But for now, it's like attached to the roll top portion and just kind of like, I pull it right straight down to my face. So it works out great. So yeah, I'm loving it. It was a good purchase. I'm pleased with it. So what's your favorite thing?
My favorite thing is I saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness over the weekend with my wife.
Oh, did you now?
And it was absolutely incredible, and it blew away my expectations. And I stayed away from spoilers,
really?
So I will continue to do that.
Spoilers. I won't spoil anything for our listeners, but I will say I am very displeased with the direction they took with one of the primary characters. I'll put it that way.
Wow, that was the most delightful thing. I absolutely loved it and thought it was wonderful.
Okay, we'll talk about why you're wrong later.
So, yeah, it was a great experience. But the highlight is the movie, but there was another like sub highlight, and that was that we went to Alamo Drafthouse for the first time because there's none in the Fredericksburg area anywhere.
I didn't know there was one in Charlottesville. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome, right?
Yeah, no, my wife grew up near what used to be the only one in Virginia, and that was in Winchester. So it's interesting they opened up another one.
Yeah, it's there.
I had the Alamo experience as well.
It's so the experience is this: you're in the theater and you have like a sizable table, but not a very big one, like a small table in front of you for two people. It's like you can
like
get
a shelf. It's more like a shelf.
Yeah, it's a shelf, and the menus are all there, and the order cards, and they teach you how to do all that. But what's hilarious and kind of distracting, at least for the first time, was watching the wait staff bring food and drinks to all of its people like while the movie was playing, because they go way out of their way to make sure they don't block your view or make a sound. So they're like these little all black dress ninjas that are like squatting down and like shuffling, and I was laughing internally at like this. It's ridiculous. These people have like trays of food and they're almost on their knees like scurrying around trying to be quiet. And I was like, this is hilarious. Like, someone should get a video of this, because it's like, and as they run around, like, bringing all their food. But yeah, it was cool. We had good food, good drinks. And like I said, I absolutely adored the movie and thought it was amazing. Didn't know what my expectations were going into it, but it surpassed it. And I am still an MCU universe diehard fan, and I've seen everything and love it. So there you go.
There you go.
Marvel.
I'm not going to get into it. We'll get into it later. We don't even have to get into it. We can just say that we have differing opinions, but I'm genuinely like dreading seeing the movie now because I know I'm going to.
Wow. It's so good.
It's fine. I won't get into it because if we do get into it, it'll risk spoilers, and we don't have time anyway. So
we don't.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you had a good experience. I'm glad you had a good experience, especially with Alamo. Like, I'm genuinely fascinated to find out that Alamo is in Charlottesville. So
come see a movie with me here.
If we're gonna go see anything there, we're gonna go see a Shakespeare play at the American Shakespeare.
Come see a Shakespeare play with me as well.
If I'm driving there to go see anything with you specifically, we're gonna go there. If I go drive with you to stay for the night and have a cool, like, fun family weekend, then we can go see a movie at the Alamo as part of that. But if I'm like coming down to see something with you, it's probably going to be a Shakespeare play.
Okay, let's go. Let's make it happen.
You're like, I don't care. I don't want to go see stuff. So
yeah.
There. All right. Well, that is favorite thing. Which leads us to our last segment before the main topic, which is
DLC.
DLC stands for downloadable content. Termite, why don't you explain what it is?
That whatever that noise we made together was, I don't know what that was. It was supposed to be like kind of a satire on rap horns from like, rap horns and music and such from modern culture. But DLC is downloadable content. It is a play on words, because usually in video games you get the content that's on the disc and then additional content added later as downloadable options to pay extra money for, that sometimes are completely outlandish and ridiculous, like Far Cry Dragon Blood or whatever it was called. And sometimes it's just like actually adds onto the game and continues its story. And so we play with that and add a little side conversation onto our topic here. And the funny part is it doesn't cost anyone anything because we're not big enough for ad revenue. So there's no ads and everything's free. So we have a little side conversation that may or may not be related to our topic. That's DLC.
Tonight is kind of a like a flip side, like a put yourself in the shoes of the people where shoe pudding, the people where we're trying to convince, like this episode is like a persuasive, or you had the do you ever do like a speech taking class in
Yeah.
college or high school.
We all had
so
to do
like they
public
tell
speaking.
you there's like
Woof.
right, there's like the persuasive speech and the informative. This is like a
Yep.
hard line persuasive, right? So let's put ourselves in the shoes and let's say this is basically like what is something the prompt is this is not really video game related at all, but it's more closely related to the topic and what we're trying to accomplish. So we're trying to give people reasons to play games. People who may be listening to this episode may not want to or have any current desire to get into video games. Some might be curious and be listening to the podcast for that reason, but some might not have any interest at all. So what is something that you currently feel like you don't really have a lot of interest in, and what would convince you to try it is kind of what I want to do with this DLC.
Without offending you, because you might be actually a little bit miffed, just a little bit.
That's fine.
There's a real world example of this. A real world example is Doctor Who just announced their next actor who's going to be Doctor Who. And I watched the Netflix show called Sex Education, and he is amazing in that show. And I am now way more interested in Doctor Who than I ever have been before because of that casting choice.
I am a little miffed now that I think about
See?
it. I'm like,
because you've tried to convince me to watch Doctor Who for years. Like, you've always talked about how amazing it is, and I've never took upon the like
into my insecurity that you don't take my suggestions seriously and instead wait till someone else outside with more legitimacy, in this case an actor portraying a character, comes along. No, what's more exciting, granted I'm excited about the new actor as well, but what's more exciting is the guy who's the guy who's running the show now was the guy who ran the show back when they rebooted it in 2005. So like he did
interesting. Okay.
Like 3 or 4 seasons, and then he passed the torch on to a guy named Stephen Moffat, who ran it for a couple of he ran it for longer. It was like 5 or 6 seasons, but it was with 2 separate doctors, incarnations of the Doctor, and then they just passed the torch to the guy who brought the first female Doctor on board, and it went downhill. People again, it wasn't because of her. Everyone loved Jodie Whittaker, who played her, but the writing went really down. The guy didn't. It's like his writing staff just didn't really know how to handle the material, and they added a bunch of new canon that the fans just didn't like. So everybody was excited. They're bringing back the guy who started it back up again in 2005, Russell T Davies. So he's coming back, and now they have the world's first Black Doctor. They did go male again, which I was genuinely surprised. I thought they were going to ride the female train for as long as they could take it, right? But no. So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to derail your.
Oh, you're fine.
Prompt there.
To resurrect your ego a little bit and your sensibilities here, Elden Ring was a win for you, for me.
That is,
like
you're
me playing
right.
that.
Yep.
And so was
true.
Returnal.
Well, okay, yeah.
You pushed me over the edge
Kind
for
of.
Returnal. I am interested in Elden Ring because of your love for From Software titles.
Elden Ring pushed you over the edge. No, I laid the seeds. I'll take credit for laying the seeds on Elden Ring.
Sure, you get some of the credit.
It was the 10 out of 10s and 9 out of 10s the industry was showering that watered the plant and caused it to grow.
I would have had zero interest if I wasn't hanging out with you every week. So there's that.
Wait, you're telling me that you wouldn't have played Elden Ring at all?
Correct.
Even if
I would have completely skipped it. Yep.
Okay, all right, fine. I'll take that. I'll take that win.
You should.
I'll take that win.
Yeah.
Thank you for fluffing my ego there. Let's see.
What's your answer to this persuasive argument question?
What is my answer? Yeah. Let me think here. Because the first one that came to mind, I don't know if there's anything that would persuade me to do it. So I'm gonna go with I know. I'll go with like following a sport.
Okay.
I'll say any sport at this point because I just have no interest in it. The closest I have to any single sport to follow is hockey, and even there, I'm like, it would probably take the same thing to convince me to start following and becoming a quote hockey fan as it would any sport. So what it would take to convince me to get into that, I think someone who I think it would probably take someone to drag me into a fan. I think that fantasy would be my only way to get into it, right? Like a fantasy hockey or football thing, because I do think I would like the game elements and also the sort of I loved the league, right? And it made it look really fun, even if that's not true to what a league is supposed to feel like at all.
Right.
I think that it's still enough of a curiosity thing that some of I do think there probably is a lot of that fun trash talking and that fun stuff. So I think it would take that, but it would also take someone to literally sit me down and walk me through not just how it works, but also why it's fun, right? I think I would genuinely need someone to be this is what makes this interesting. Explain their point of view, what they get out of it. Someone to legitimately be what, sometimes you need someone to, it's not that you want someone to dictate how you feel, because no one can do that, nor should they do that. But someone can explain why they feel some way, and if you empathize with, if you have any shred of empathy, you empathize with that feeling, and maybe even kind of like, oh, I get it, right? Eventually it kind of clicks. Like I've had that experience so many times where it's just like, this didn't click before, but someone else's passion for it and simply explaining why they get satisfaction out of it made me think of it a different way, which then helped me enjoy it more. So I think that would probably be what it would take for me to get into
nice. I'm going to run this example of what I watched a friend of mine go through with NASCAR. I want to see if this would actually be appealing to you. I think this is a great example. So NASCAR is known for its tailgating parties because you can park for free and you can tailgate all day long before the race, and you're allowed to bring your own alcohol, beers, cans into the race itself and not have to pay money for the stadium. So I had a huge collection of friends way before you came along into my life, and we all went to go see a NASCAR race. So you have to rent headphones to like tune to the radio broadcast because their cars are so loud that you're not going to hear anything announcing over the PA system. And so Kevin, friend of the show, who came onto our show before, was listening to the spotter of a particular race car, listening to how the spotter was describing where all of the cars were around the driver. He looked at me and's like, dude, this is like a raid leader, like describing to 40 people how to defeat a boss over the course of like 4 hours. Yeah. Like the exact same type of descriptions and direction given from the spotter. And he was like tuned in. So there you go. There's an example of a sport, NASCAR, you're not interested in at all, and maybe a way that you could be interested in it.
Yeah, no, that's not an invitation.
Oh, bummer.
Well,
I'm willing.
I suppose. No, to be fair, I guess that's an invitation because we were asking that of our listeners, and I asked that of you with Doctor Who. So I suppose that
anytime you want to watch a NASCAR race, I will gladly sit and because whenever you show up to like an event, like if you show up to a Super Bowl party and you don't really know football, you don't really understand why people love it, you ask. Like one way to go about it is to start asking a lot of questions, but then you're afraid of like people being annoyed by like, who is this guy? He doesn't care about football. Why is he coming here asking a bunch of questions? Just watch the game and be quiet. Stop distracting us. And well, I don't have that mentality with NASCAR. Anyone who ever wants to watch a race with me, I will gladly pause the race and like describe on screen exactly what's going on and, dictate and educate and help. So if you ever want to do that, I'm here for you.
We'll see. Maybe it's a. Well, I think we'd have to be in the same room. I'm probably not going to be like,
there's no
get on a watch party with me.
No.
We'll have to make a thing. I'll help do a thing.
It would just have to be like, right. It would just have to be on anyway.
Yep. Word. Cool. Well, that leads us into our main topic. I feel like that's a good jumping off point to talk about reasons to get into gaming, to kick off our non-gaming series. I really want to just sort of quickly throw out there, just like, again, reiterate the reason why we're doing this. I've been thinking about this topic longer than this moment, but it really hit home that I wanted to do this like now. I ran across an article. I think it was unfortunately Kotaku, which, I know we're not big fans of on the podcast anymore.
Yeah.
But they did do a pretty good piece, I think, on a guy who on Reddit, like it was adorable. There was this old couple in the, I want to say California area, or maybe it was the Midwest. I don't remember where, but they had posted some ad. I want to even say they put it in like the newspaper or something ridiculous. And it was this old couple. I mean, there was like 80-year-old couple, and they're like, we want to get into video gaming, but we want someone to show us how. And they listed like a really good, solid criteria of what they were looking for. They're like, we want someone who can be patient with us and explain it. And we don't want a bunch of game suggestions. We want to play this specific game and get into it and learn it. And it was like really, really wholesome. And someone responded to that ad and did it. So I want to shout out Weekend Feel. It was what his Reddit username is. We actually reached out to him to do an interview, but it was around Christmas time and just stuff was busy. And he kind of went dark.
I was
after
moving.
That.
Yeah.
All right. You were moving. It was just crazy. And so we were like, let's push it off to the new year. New Year came and went, and he wasn't as responsive, and that's okay. Like, we wish you the best of luck with whatever you got going on. We could feel, but he was like a 19 or 20-year-old kid or something, like real young, and like had the patience to like help this old couple. Like, and they stuck with it. Like, they did it, and now they're into playing games together as a couple. Like, it's a really, really cool story and really highlights what we're trying to accomplish. So we genuinely wanted to interview him and sort of conceived of this as what would start with an interview and then go in more into the philosophical ideas but I've been for a long time really passionate about this notion of like teaching games, right? Like teaching, like, and that starts with like introducing people to the idea of like why start, right? Why start? Why learn if it's not something, if you're like a 20 something year old person, 30, 40, whatever, 80, right? Like if you've lived X amount of your life without playing games, then why start now? It just seems unnecessary. You're right, it is unnecessary, but I don't think that doesn't mean there's not reasons to do it, right? Like they don't have to be like life or death reasons to still be valid reasons. So that's kind of what we're doing here, starting there. And then next time we'll talk about teaching games, which again, like how does one teach or how does one learn? Where does one start? What does that look like? That's what I'm excited about for next week. And then the last one we'll talk about is like more of a what can you bring to the table? Why is it important for the gaming industry for people who are not currently into gaming to get into gaming? What changes could come as a result of that? That's what we'll end with. And but we'll start here at the beginning, I think. A very good place to start.
The idea of educating the quote like non-gamer or someone who's not gaming adjacent kind of crowd is the undercurrent of our whole show. This is episode 245. We have 244 other previous episodes where usually whenever we introduce a topic, we define the topic and we put up bounds around it. We know exactly, we clarify what we're talking about, and we might go an extra mile or two just describing exactly what we're talking about, which could be annoying to those who are like in the culture every day, but we want to make sure we're inclusive to everyone. And if you don't know all of the lingo and you don't know specific terms and such, we want to like lay that groundwork to be accessible to everyone. And that's also why we're family friendly.
Exactly. I hate when people use like acronyms. I'm working IT, and it's always bothered me when people just throw out acronyms, expecting you to understand what that is,
It's
and
kind
not
of the gatekeeping.
caring. It kind of is, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like the notion of just simply taking the time to say DLC stands for downloadable content, right? Or just RPG is a role-playing game, first-person shooter, FPS, right? Like just even simply taking the extra time to explain acronyms assumes that the person on the other end doesn't know what you're talking about. And though that may feel condescending to someone who knows the term, it's not intended to be. And it's an exercise of empathy for the person who understands it already to think, oh, well, I'm not the center of the universe. They're not just talking to me. They might be talking and trying to like explain it for those who may not. So starting with the default should be, we don't want to assume that people know what we're talking about.
Exactly.
But more than that, I really am passionate. Like I would almost do an entire series on just games education, right? Like basically like an entire show that was just us teaching fundamental concepts and like doing starting point things. What partially did inspire this as well was I saw a YouTube video. I should probably talk about all my inspirations. Even before the Weekend Field thing, I saw a YouTube video that was like a dude who did an experiment where his wife, who was not a gamer, was watching him, I think, play Hollow Knight. And she was like interested. She was like, this looks fun. I want to play this. And he was like, you sure? You sure you want to play Hollow Knight? Yeah, I'm into it. Okay, all right. So he did an experiment where he basically just like handed her the controller and let her play. And then he decided to pick like, I think 14 other games to do that with and just kind of see what he tried to identify. His point was to try to identify what were the pain points. What about game design itself gets in the way? What assumptions do game developers make that they shouldn't? So his basic things, he's like, she didn't know that like in Doom, like she didn't know that like all she had to do was walk up to this predetermined thing and she would like punch it, right? She never, it was like a thing covered in like parasites or whatever, and she was trying to like move the explosives in the room and shoot the explosives to get the parasites off. And it was like, no, all you had to do was like walk up to the thing. But it's like she's trying to put creative solutions into something that was like and anyone who's played Doom before knows you gotta walk up to the glowing thing, you stick your fist into it, right? But like if you've never played Doom before and don't even know what Doom is, how are you supposed to know that intuitively? And other things too, like green means like health, but sometimes means poison. Red means health, but sometimes means death, right? Like those are things that gamers intuitively figure out. Things like jumping and holding the button to extend your jump. Like my wife didn't know that. My wife we're playing It Takes Two, and she's trying to figure out, like, she still wants to instinctively hit the button as fast as possible, a double jump. And I'm like, no, actually, if you wait till the apex of your jump, it's like half a beat. It's not even a full second, but just like wait just a second, extend your jump, and then hit the button again. It's like the rhythm is natural to me. I've been playing games my whole life, but not everyone has. So again, what's a starting point? What game do you start with that teaches those fundamentals intuitively? Everyone will probably have a different opinion on that. But it's an important thing. I think it's something the gaming industry needs to finally reckon with. I mean, it's $1 billion industry, but it could be a $1 trillion industry, maybe even, right? Like if Right, like it's like the growth opportunities are really important, and I think the industry has probably been wrestling with that for the last 10 years, independent of our opinions on it. But I think like this should trickle down into everyone's mind. How do we reach a bigger audience? Because there's really good reasons beyond just money for the industry to do it.
I like it. I'm
Good
here for all
start.
of that. Yeah.
Good start. Let's jump into the topic then. So let's start again where we like to start with without making assumptions here.
Yep.
What do we mean by gamer versus non-gamer? And why are these monicles useful and where do they fall short?
I mean, even just the definition of gamer has its own subdivisions in and of
Oh my
itself.
gosh,
But
it's
yeah,
so,
I don't want to
yep.
get
It's so
caught in the
laden,
weeds
right?
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, because there's a hardcore gamer and a casual gamer. But anyway, a gamer is someone who just appreciates and loves video games, and it can be as deep in the weeds as following the industry beats every day, or as shallow as firing up their PlayStation or Xbox, or even playing their Nintendo Switch Animal Crossing, and that's it. They just play Animal Crossing and they don't play anything else, maybe some cell phone games. Like, to me, that's a gamer. So it's someone who
Really?
plays
I have a
games.
slightly more nuanced definition. I would say that a gamer is someone who identifies as a gamer. And yes, all of those characteristics you just described would like probably
true.
be the indicators of someone who identifies as a gamer. But to me,
Right.
the only thing that separates a gamer from a non-gamer is someone who identifies. And the reason I say that is because everything is gamified now, right? Like it doesn't matter if you identify as a gamer or not. You're engaging in game-like behavior on social media, and like so many people are on social media. I won't say everyone, but like so many people are on social media. Your phone has a game, right? Like, what do you call someone who spends 3 hours of their day playing cell phone games between tasks at work? Do you call that person a gamer, considering they may play games on their phone more than you or I?
Interesting
Like,
insight, because
maybe
I
you
would call them a gamer, but I'm not them. So you're right. It's
Right.
put the onus on them to identify as a gamer or not, and they can
Absolutely,
have
yep.
their own definition, and there's no wrong answer. It's like
There
you're
are
a gamer or you're
100%.
not. Yeah, I like
Exactly.
it.
There are 100%
Yeah.
people out there who play tons of games and still don't call themselves gamers, right?
Right. Yep.
I think there is certainly, I do think it's sort of an identity thing, right? You either identify as one or not, which is why we haven't called this topic reasons to become a gamer. That's not what we're not trying to
Yeah.
change anyone's mind as to what their identity should be. We're simply saying, if you identify as a non-gamer, here's why you should consider getting into gaming and playing it and being, I like to use the difference, instead of being a gamer, being a person who loves video games.
Yeah.
Because that's more of an identity neutral statement. Because the problem is, gamer does have lots of baggage as a term there,
Yeah,
and
it
that's
does.
why it falls short, right? Like it's I would say it's useful because it really does sort of encapsulate all the behavior you just described, right? Like, but all that behavior doesn't necessarily make someone a gamer. All that really does is their identity, and unfortunately, the identity of gamer has been something that has unfortunately gotten dragged through the mud due to the behavior of not kind or good people who have identified as that and then done terrible, like just behaved poorly, inexcusably. And so I don't begrudge anybody out there, no matter how much you love or hate video games. I don't begrudge anyone out there for not wanting to say I'm a gamer. I sometimes have a hard time saying it myself. So yeah, cool. But we're talking about change here. What has changed or is changing about the gaming industry that makes gaming more approachable than ever? And why are the stigmas around gaming something that shouldn't impede anyone from trying out games?
So, Termite history lesson. No, I'm not going to go into a super deep video game history lesson, although this question invites that. Back in the day, in the early 90s, when I was a kid, video games they had just recovered from the major crash in the 80s, and Nintendo kind of resurrected the gaming industry as far as taking up retailer space in stores and becoming something that young teenage boys do. Capitalism marketed to young boys. It was very niche, however you want to say it. And then fast forward to the Wii. The Wii single-handedly transformed the approachability of video games, brought it to the family. Grandma's playing it. Wii's are in nursing homes. Everyone's playing Wii bowling and badminton and having a blast with their families at parties. Video games are everywhere. And then slowly, as video games have continued to, as gamers from the 90s grew up and had kids, video games never went anywhere. And so you have an generational leap happening where gaming is being passed on down, and it's continuing to grow. And now those who loved games as kids are now making games and are at the C levels of gaming companies, developers, publishers. And it's just proliferating and becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. The industry is booming. It's growing. The pandemic happened. Boom, it's everywhere. And sometime between my early childhood in the 90s and now in the 2020s, you can walk into a Target and you can see Mario pajamas, you can see Kirby underwear, you can see Minecraft birthday decorations with cakes and streamers and like all that stuff. So like gaming is everywhere now. It's all over the place. And so a lot of things have changed, time being that, and a lot of industry things have happened, but it's here. It's everywhere. You can't miss it now as a parent. You can't miss it as a child. You're going to run into it. Gaming is all over
and
the
it
place.
used to, I mean, it was, I would say it was a lot of hard work and effort from the gaming industry. They did realize that for a long time it was just marketed towards a specific demographic. And they had leaned so hard into that they were screwing themselves out of a wider audience. And so there was I think there was a concentrated effort, much of which Nintendo, like you said, with the Wii and stuff, like made a big like impact on. But nevertheless, like there was just this association for a long time, and the gaming industry and culture has tried very hard to break from that association. Even, again, as much as we like to roll our eyes, even like Kotaku making an effort to be more woke, they may go overboard sometimes, but their effort is to try, I think their intentions at least were to still try to be inclusive and try to break this stigma that just everybody involved with this is an awful person who is also, doesn't think about anyone beyond themselves, right? Like,
Yep.
so that is there's an effort that was made, and I think it's working, right? Like, the fact is, and we'll hit more on this as one of one of the reasons, but like the fact is they've made more types of games. Like, you can just look at the evidence of like not every game is a first person shooter military grungy Call of Duty clone, right? Like, and they never were that, of course, but there's so much more like variety that is being invested in now.
Yeah, the technology has improved in such a way that we can tell meaningful stories. Like the evolution of just storytelling in games has evolved as much as the technology has between the Super Nintendo and the Switch, or versus your PlayStation 1 and your PlayStation 5, right? As the graphics and the fidelity gets better, motion capture gets better, animations get better, you can start bringing in better voice actors, sound animation or sound engineering gets better. And so like as you bring all that stuff to more modern scope of, with technology, you can tell like this blockbuster sort of story that's analogous to the big movies in Hollywood where people flock to in droves to go spend tons of money on and tell a meaningful story. And then there's like even more creative nuance happening on the indie front where you can have these really, really personal, deep empathy stories that happen in real quick like experiences that are 5 to 10 hours or even 1 to 5 hours. Like that stuff didn't exist before the internet. So like the fact that consoles are all connected to the internet and everything's kind of in the cloud now and everything's just a window into the internet, that's another like beat that has happened in the gaming industry that has made it, reduced the stigma, changed the stigma, like put gaming everywhere.
Yep, I totally agree. Cool. So, we've kind of set the scene. We've laid the stage. We've talked about the context. Like, we've talked about how things have changed. But let's take a step back, and before we jump into all of the meat of our topic, which is the reasons. What are the reasons? What are the solid reasons to get into gaming? Let's first kind of head off. What are bad reasons to get into game? Like, if you're like, I'm getting into gaming because of this reason, like, what would you say is a bad reason? Something that is like, nope, that's not the reason you should do it. You should do it for either you should do it for this reason or you shouldn't do it at all. Please just don't do it for this reason. What are those bad reasons?
As we talked about earlier with our introduction as to what does it mean to be a gamer or non-gamer, putting the onus on the person and not trying to control someone else. So this is peer pressure. Like, don't get into gaming because you feel like you're just trying to appease someone, or it's some obligatory situation where you just have to play a game because your partner is like really laying it on thick. And you're like, fine.
Whether it's a romantic relationship or friends or family, like if someone says you have to play games to get along with us,
not a good reason to do it.
Yeah, and say screw you, right? Like, and honestly, don't play games with those people. Just don't. Like, right? If they're willing to put your relationship with them on the line just to get you to do something fun with them, they're probably not a good person to be in a relationship with. I don't care if they're your significant other. Break up with them, find someone better, quite frankly. I don't care if they're your family, right? Like, tell them to F off, and that if they want a relationship with you in the future, they're going to need to not do manipulative crap like that, right? It's stupid, and peer pressure is dumb. And sometimes peer pressure isn't like direct. It isn't that ultimatum kind of thing. Sometimes it's, I feel like I need to do this to fit in. And if you feel that way, that's not a good reason. Like,
like doing anything
sort
to
it
fit
out
in is not a good reason to do anything.
Right. talk to you, have a good honest conversation about your friends, be like, hey, I feel like I'm getting pressured to do this, and you guys probably aren't intending to do that, but like I need, I was hoping we could do some more of this kind of stuff. And if there are actually good people in your friends, they'll like figure it out and try to like
Yeah, we kind of
accommodate that.
experienced this in like a friend group, even like young adult stage in life, where we had some friends that just weren't into video games while they were friends with 6 other people who were. And so these Smash parties were like our regular social gatherings. And some people spoke up and they're like, I'm not really into Smash, but I still want to hang out with you guys. Can we just do like a cookout and like play some yard games instead? And everyone was like, absolutely. Forget like, who cares about Smash Bros in this moment? We want to hang out too. This is awesome. We want to include you. So yeah, that's exactly a perfect example. We could have took the stance of, well, if you want to be friends with us, you got to play Smash. Sorry. That's a terrible thing to do. So if you're feeling pressured to play video games like that, that is not a good reason to jump in.
Right. Yeah. I think the next two kind of are the same thing. I don't know why I separated them, but like I wrote down like trying to impress other people or gain clout in some kind of arena.
Oh, yeah. You actually
And
touched on something we haven't talked about yet. And this is great. I'm glad you actually put those there. I'm going to lump them together and I'm going to say this. Don't get into gaming because you think there's money to be made on Twitch and YouTube. Just because you watch a Twitch streamer and you think that you can do the same thing they do and it's quote easy. And no, they have a deep passion for what they're doing. The honest, successful ones do. And just because you think it's out there and you can do it, it's not for everyone. It's super hard. It's very, very difficult. And you can't just like step into that thinking I can get into games just to make some easy money as a side gig and then not really put yourself there. It's going to be a bad reason to get into gaming and it's not going to stick and you're going to be miserable. But because of the zeitgeist that is streaming, there's this pull to like do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I do feel for like the kids, our kids generation or even, the Gen Z kids who kind of grew up with streamers, like this notion of like, I mean, I would be able to say that like a nuanced take would be like you could be into watching Twitch streams of games and not actually be into playing games yourself, right? Like I feel like there are people out there who probably
there are. I know people that do that. Yep.
And so then to say like, well, I want to do it so that I can gain clout or make money or whatever, right? Whatever it is that your goal is. Like if you generally don't like if you like watching streams, then watch streams. If you like playing games, then play games. But if you don't like playing games, don't play games. Force yourself to play games because you want to stream, right? That's the thing is like nowadays, especially you can Twitch stream anything, like anything else you enjoy, and you're always going to be, if you genuinely want to make it. I'm not going to be someone who says like crush your dreams here and be like you'll never make it in this, like no, but you're more likely to make it if you actually do something you enjoy. So I agree, that's something that that's a definitely even slightly nuanced version of what I was saying, but I was like basically what I put those down there was like any time you're attempting to like gain some kind of legitimacy, right? Like I guess this may be a far-fetched idea, but like a politician who's like, oh, I want to get clout among gamers, so I'm going to talk about and force
comes
myself
off as
to play
fake
games.
Yep.
Absolutely. It's a terrible reason. It's a terrible reason to do it. Like, and so just don't. Right. So I would avoid that entirely. Again, if it comes down to the only reason you're going to play is because you're trying to impress people or get clout of some kind, then just don't. Right. Like people are able to find ways to impress people that like are actually impressive because they're actually coming from a genuine place. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And that's not us gatekeeping here, anything. It's just like if you are exploring reasons to get into gaming and you might think that we're trying to free you from that kind of chain and make it so that people are doing what they love and being honest with themselves and honest with everyone else for a sense of like self and purpose, not trying to push anyone away. We want more gamers. We love video games. We're here to educate and teach. So these are the bad reasons why people would get into games. Yeah, and we know
I would say
it's
gatekeeping only in the sense that it's gatekeeping only in the sense that it's like we are closing and locking the doors that lead you into the kitchen, right? That lead you into the place you don't want to be. It's the ugly side of gaming, right? Like legitimately those two, like those kind of things like peer pressure and clout, like that's trying to, it's like what you want is something different, right? If you're trying to get into a club and you end up going through a door that leads you into the kitchen, it's literally going to be not the experience you want or the expectations you have. Like go through the front door and just go into the club, right? Right. You know what I mean? Like go in for the reasons and the way that so boom, let's open the doors, let's open the gates and talk about what are those good reasons? What are things that are like if I was trying to convince someone that I would say, hey, like not even someone on the fence. Just like if I were to, I think about my mom and dad sometimes when thinking about this. I'm like, why should my mom get into games? What is it about games that would be appealing and attractive to my mom? What is it about games that would be appealing and attractive to my dad? It seems like a monumental thing, but like, why not consider it, right? In the same way that I sat there and I was like, I could spend my entire life being like, I'm not a sports guy. I don't want to play sports. And I would, or play, I don't want to watch sports or engage in that culture at all. And maybe I'd go through the rest of my life still being satisfied, not having done it. But I'm depriving myself of something, right? Like, there are probably legitimately interesting and good reasons to get into sports, and I would be a fool not to intellectually at least explore those things. So I would be a fool not to intellectually explore and say, oh yeah, my mom is probably capable of enjoying games. And I have literally had that conversation with her. So like, let's talk about those reasons. I listed these in 4 separate categories. You can agree with them. I want to talk about the utilitarian reasons why, like what can you actually get from games that you can't get in other forms of entertainment or even other forms of interaction, right? I'll talk about like how the quality of games lends itself to being something of value. I want to talk about obviously things like community and connection. And then I want to talk about the idea of change that we're going to probably hit more in depth on in the episode 3 of this series. So, but utilitarian, what I mean by that is like what does gaming actually give you? Like, what skills can you learn from games that like, I'm sure you could learn them in other contexts, but like games teach you like a lot of different things. Like games actually literally give you skills. What are some of those things?
So I will speak from my own personal experience on 2 accounts. One of them is early childhood. Video games exposed me to mythology and like as vocabulary and literature in a unique way, so that when I experienced, like when I heard the word mithril and ether, Phoenix Down from Final Fantasy 3 on the Super Nintendo, even though I was too young to understand that game, like Phoenix Down is the feather of a phoenix. Phoenix is a bird rises from the ashes mythology that's from actual like non-video game related lore. And then understanding like mithril is a thing in Lord of the Rings. So I experienced it in games first, but those terms became familiar with me. So I just think that that's part of shaping your vocabulary in the way that books would. It's fantasy. It might not be real, but at least it's educating you in some way. And there are educational games that I did play that like laid the ground and foundation for like world maps and exploring the world and other cultures. And that's getting more and more robust now even. And then the other thing is I learned how to play drums because of Rock Band. So my love for gaming brought me together with a group of friends, and I love rhythm games by like whatever is innate in my soul that enjoys a beat. And I played the drums, and that just happened to translate to real life drums. And then I started drumming and took lessons and like evolved there in like that world and kind of explored that talent. So that's just utilitarian, right? That's exposing a person to new things, which movies do and books do. And this is just another way of doing it with the sense of agency
I would say
and control.
It's definitely superior to other. Yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely superior to other mediums in the sense that like you can watch a movie, a biopic, and say, "Hey, that drumming is cool. It would be cool to do that." It's a whole nother thing to be like, I literally have done the movements, and it feels like something that is satisfying, right? Like there's very few other things that can do that, short of someone sitting you down in front of a drum set and having you play. And that's honestly, that's a harder sell than someone saying, "Hey, you like to play games, right? Why don't you come play this game that's like a drumming rhythm game?" And then that being the starting point. Like I feel like that's a much bigger I feel like that's great. I hadn't actually thought of that. I was thinking when I thought of this question, I was thinking specifically things like, I mean, there are studies that show that it increases reaction time, right? Like I wouldn't necessarily be like, you want to increase your reaction time, you should play games. But even those like soft skills, those tiny skills, things like strategy, like I think that I have the ability to strategically think of like approach things strategically. And I think it's almost entirely video games. I don't know if I ever would have encountered anything that would have taught me basic strategizing, how to break down a scenario and decide how to make a decision based on those things. Like all of that I learned, like was exposed to in video games first. And I mean, literally, is that not what play was evolved, like how we evolved play in the first place? Like tiger cubs and stuff, they wrestle because they're learning those like important hunting skills. They're in a safe environment. They're just sitting there like figuring out how to do the motions that will allow them to like survive and kill prey. Like video games are just a more super advanced version of just like teaching you like skills that are valuable in like securing a future for yourself. So like I would personally say that like I can troubleshoot now and be successful in my IT job because I learned how to break down scenarios in video games. So that like things like that, things like honestly, like the other step beyond that is then like I learned how to teach in video games. I'm not a teacher, but I've been told I'm pretty good at breaking down concepts, and that was all because of like my raiding days in World of Warcraft. I learned how to say, okay, here's information you need to know, and here's the best way to communicate that to you in a way that's efficient and also effective, so that we can down this stupid boss. I know it's like, it seems like an inane thing,
It
but
seems
like
so hard.
people have but people have told me that like I'm good at doing that. Like I was told, hey, you should be someone in a raid one time like whispered me and said you should be a teacher, and I was like, why? And they're like, because you're so good at explaining these raids, right? Like, and that's so there's skills you learn that you wouldn't have otherwise learned. Like it's maybe not my number one reason that I would say someone should get into games, but it genuinely is something that I'm like, I will be proud of my kids, and I will be happy to expose them to games because of this, like this reason, right?
Yeah. So. And even like exploring games that are like Mario or Zelda, where you're like in an open world-ish environment and you're like exploring things. You notice when things are out of place or when something is like trying to get your attention. And that translates to tracking things in the wild. Like if you notice some scratches on the wall, you can infer, oh, was that a creature, an animal, a person? Like you can like see, it trains your mind to see things that are out of place. And in a video game and good design, the designer of the game is trying to attract your attention to this thing that could be a mystery that you could solve, a puzzle, something fun is behind there for you to explore. That is analogous, and it does translate to like, and obviously it's a curated experience versus real life, like going into the woods. But like you said, it's in a safe space. Like I'm not gonna let my 2-year-old run out into the woods to just run around for the sake of whatever. But when he's 3 or 4 and can play Mario, absolutely he's going to be able to explore worlds and like be able to see how the environment interacts with him and be able to like train your brain to pick out little things and run in that direction and see what happens. And then the games are good at rewarding you for doing it. And so that translates to real world these are interaction.
And this stuff is just being explored. Yeah. Right. This is tip of the like this is the stuff that we're just now doing studies to show that like this is an effective teaching tool. I guarantee you 20 years down the road, if society maintains its current level of sophistication, we will absolutely be using this tool to teach skills. Like I think the whole education landscape, not going to say is going to be entirely oriented around games, but there are going to be games specifically used to teach things because they're the most effective tool to do so. So
yeah,
like,
and we know like the metaverse is coming and like the virtual reality, augmented reality, all that stuff. But anyway, I don't want to take too much time talking about that. Lots of utility in gaming, reaction time, cognitive processing, like all that stuff. Yeah.
Yep. So my second category was quality. The fact is, like you were hitting on this earlier, right? And so we don't have to spend a ton of time here because we already kind of hit on this, but you talked about how, like, when we talked about how the landscape has changed, you talked a lot about how they are actually, like, good now, right? Like back in the day, the technology only allowed us to do, like, pixel stuff. And granted, those were incredible experiences for their time. But, like, there's no way they could have done, like, a game like Uncharted where it's a fully realized cinematic experience. And that's only just gotten better and better. And I'm telling you, like, and I've said that before on the podcast, like, there will be games that come out now that will be studied by like English classes in the future because they're becoming an actually viable storytelling medium. Yep. And there are games that I'm like, again, talking about like thinking about my mom. I'm like, Mom, I know what kinds of stories you like. You would actually really enjoy this game. And if you played it, and that's, again, a really good role for like a really good, you know, when talking about like difficulties in games, that's like the place for games with story difficulties is because it's like, you know, I would never say, even though I like, you know, though I might intellectually be like, Mom probably would find the storytelling experience of a From Software game fascinating. I probably just never would ever expect that of my mom. But I could get my mom to play God of War, I think, right? Like maybe, right? But like there's a reason I want her to do it, right? And that's what we're talking about tonight. Whether I'd be successful or not is a different story. But the reason that that I have to get my mom into play any game, in the case of God of War, it's because you would freaking love the story that they tell, and you could play it on story difficulty and not worry about like, dying a lot and stuff. Like,
and I like you can use my dad as an example too. He loves reading these novels that are kind of like, what's the Keanu Reeves movie? Is it Jack Ryan or is that John Krasinski? What's the Zach?
John Wick.
Thank you. Like the John Wick action films. He loves things like Navy SEALs doing top secret missions and like going and infiltrating. So I'm thinking like Metal Gear and Splinter Cell would be right up his alley. And modern day games have now changed their entire landscape when it comes to accessibility and difficulty and that whole conversation. I am not using it to, they are very two different things, but the conversation in video games and the implementation of what it means to change the experience for anyone, to allow accessibility, to allow anyone to enjoy them, to me, that reduces the barrier of entry. Difficulty is one way with which you could do that. So like adding the story mode difficulty is a version of accessibility for our parents who might not have the From Software skills to jump into Elden Ring, but would love a story like Horizon Forbidden West on story mode where the enemies don't overwhelm and the mechanics don't overwhelm because they're new to gaming. And so they don't have that.
Absolutely.
But,
yep.
So
and
yeah,
there are so many of
all
those
that stuff.
experiences that I'm like, I would feel like I wouldn't be wanting for any. And I would say like this, and you need that aspirational thing to be like, here is what you can work towards with someone. That, if you're sitting there being like someone who you're teaching gaming for the first time, they may never get there, but if they click with gaming, I feel like they're going to want that progressional experience of being like, hey, guess what? There is something you can shoot for to try to work towards.
Yep.
That's why I feel like then that's the additional role of a game like a From Software game. But also it wouldn't be for everyone. It would be like a, I don't know, a promising student kind of thing. Whatever. Either way. Cool. Let's blast through these last two because I don't think we're gonna have time for everything else we want to talk about. So we'll just kind of bring this to a close here. Community connection. I feel like this one's obvious. If you've listened to our show for a long time, you know that like connection is a really important thing that we both value. And I couldn't speak to enough that like, again, the gaming communities are evolving rapidly. It is no longer just teenage boys anymore, and it probably never was just teenage boys, but now it really is. Like you can find your people and find games, and those people will help you connect with more games, right? It's a deepening, it's a thing that's sort of like it becomes you feed off their passion, they feed off of yours, right? And so it's like it provides an additional sense of community, and in a way that I don't think any other community really can provide because it is so experiential. Maybe like, I don't know, like skill communities, like communities about like doing a skill have this same level of like, we do the thing and teach each other how to do the thing and help each other do the thing better. I feel like that's what gaming communities are, is because they're so experience rooted. And you know, there are toxic ones too, right? Like I don't want to minimize that. If we don't get a chance, I had like bad reasons to not get it in gaming, and I put toxic communities under that. Like, I don't want to minimize that, but it's not a reason to not do it, right? It is like they're there, and knowing they're there and having an expectation is important. And I would never tell anyone to go in blindly about that. But also, like, they are such a small and loud minority that if you ignore them and get to the good stuff behind them, the people who are quietly enjoying the game, or the people who are loudly enjoying the game and want to cut through the BS to talk about what they love about the game, like they exist and they're there. So it's a really important part of this reasoning.
And I want to talk about the pandemic and how specifically that's a very relevant, obviously we're still kind of in it, situation that really showcased what community connection looks like. That's extraordinarily unique to just video games. If you have heard the words Among Us or Fall Guys or Fortnite or Call of Duty Warzone, like if those are buzzwords you've heard before and you've never played a video game before in your life, there's a reason why you've heard those buzzwords. It's because they are the cultural zeitgeist of the pandemic, and Apex Legends as well, and more. Like that's some of them, but those are really, really popular games. Among Us was so big and inclusive and popular amongst non-gamers that it attracted celebrities to have like Twitch streams. And it's cool because like people you wouldn't think played games do in fact play games, and they were able to show off like on Twitch or YouTube during the pandemic. And it was all through like Discord and other community engagement tools, as well as the ones built into the consoles. Consoles are connected now more than they ever have been. And so being able to play games with friends when you're isolated because of a pandemic, having a shared experience, like suddenly you're playing what was a board game experience, but online, and you have the chat, headphones and headset, and it works, and you can still collaborate over the internet and still have video chat and like be able to connect with people across the world. And your people, like you said, you find your people, whether you went to college together and you've disbanded your proximity around the world, you can still get in touch with that college group of friends or that high school group of friends and like still hang out over a video game. It's so awesome. And there's so many different types of experiences you can have just within the gaming space that it's awesome. So that is a very good reason to get into games if you have friends that play at all. Like just being able to find some used piece of gaming equipment on the internet for hopefully a relatively affordable price and like plug in and be able to jump into these awesome experiences for co-op, competition, rating, all these words we've used. And we can define any of them at any moment if anybody has any questions. But yeah, that's like community and connection on the internet is what it has never been like before. It was amazing to see over the last 2 years with this pandemic.
Sweet. And then my last reason I think that I think is a good reason to get into gaming is the idea that the more people that get into gaming, the more likely the gaming industry is to change, right? If you are worried about the toxicness of gaming communities, then honestly, the gaming communities that are most toxic need you. Maybe not the most toxic, right? But like the point is, like, the more voices there are, the more likely it is to change. If you're sitting there being like, there's not a lot of experiences that sound appealing to me, but there are a few. You know how you get more? You buy those few and you get into those few and you're involved in those few and you talk and you criticize and you make your voice heard. Because that's the thing, is like, this is ultimately still a capitalist system. And the way that it's supposed to work is that the more people that buy the thing, the more likely that thing is going to change to cater to those people. We've already seen this isn't just a theoretical thing. We've seen this in action. We've seen entire genres emerge because someone tried something risky and different and it resonated with people. And then those people liking that thing and getting passionate about that thing made that thing a thing. Right?
Yep.
Right? Does it make sense? So like
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it happen and I'm excited about the whole notion, but then I think and lament about all those people out there who are just like, nope, there's nothing for me. And when they're possibly missing out on their opportunity to create something for themselves, right? Not create it themselves, but like be a piece of a mechanism that is designed to do. That's capitalism at its best, I would say, is when people are like, I love that thing. And if you just write off the entire notion of games because you're not a gamer, then you're missing the possibility of finding a game that you love and then being a part of a machine that makes that thing a reality for more people and also more of that thing that you love, right? So does that make sense? I feel like that tracks. And I'm passionate about that because I'm like, gosh, like there are games my wife would love, but she just like doesn't, it's just not something she's like, I don't do games, right? And if she were to do games, though, she would find more games she probably loves, right? And then the fact of her buying those games would mean those games are more likely to get made. More of those games are more likely to get made. So it's like, it's a weird circular thing, but like, I think it's a good reason to get into it in the first place. It's a good reason to at least try to find something you like in the gaming space, because if you do, you might be one of many people who would cause that thing to get made again, or something to get made that's just like it, right? And who knows, entire genres could be born out of the unrealized passion that is out there right now, right? The unsought after, the people out there who don't. There's entire genres that will never exist because there's a huge amount of people out there who will never get into it and make that genre a reality. And that makes me sad.
Yeah, that's true. And I think kind of going along what you were saying is like being an avenue to help educate is what we're doing here on the show, especially with this topic specifically, is opening the door for more people that maybe didn't realize or have a misconstrued conception based on toxic communities and gatekeeping of what the gaming is. And so we're hoping that like maybe just by us describing this stuff, you talk about like being the voice of change. That's what we're doing here on this podcast. Like right now, we are hopefully changing someone's perception to more align with the reality of what it's like just by sharing our own experiences with gaming and the things that we've talked about tonight. So like we can open that door for people to come in. So we are doing that in this podcasting space, 245 episodes in. Like we're part of that. And we might not be the mainstream like gaming podcast journalism. We're not going to be featured on IGN, but we're here and we have an audience. And so maybe, just maybe, you could be that person who jumps into a Halo match, having never played Halo before, and just maybe you speak up and you say, I'm new here and I want to help, or I want to have questions and I want to be taught. And then like that in and of itself is a possible avenue for change, because you might change someone else's perception of who's playing with them, and they might actually do that, and it would be an enjoyable experience. Obviously, there's
or even better, like you might say, or even better, you might simply say, you know what, it would be really nice if if this change were to be in the game, that would make me enjoy it more. And who knows, maybe that single comment spins the wheels, right? Gets people like, oh yeah, he's right. I never would have thought of that before, but this fresh perspective has come in and told me, like, opened my eyes to this notion, right? Like, yeah, we never know without it, right? So, you know, we're not pressuring anyone to, like, you have to come in and fix our games, right? Like, we'll be fine. We'll figure it out. But I just think that there's more opportunity the more people that get involved. The more people that buy in, the more voices there are. I mean, that's literally what, like, democracy and capitalism were founded upon, is this notion. So, yeah, I mean, we're not going to be able to get into all the experiences why people shouldn't get into gaming, but I just really, really would love to disabuse people of the notion that these are just, like, stupid time wasters. Like, I could probably say that about a million other hobbies out there, and it would be just as condescending for you to hear me say it about something you love as it is for you to say something, like, to say it about something I love, right? Like, it like, anyone out there who's like, I'm not getting into gaming because it's something for kids, or it's something that's stupid, or something for nerds, or something for, like, idiots, like, I'm sorry. I just, like, I'm not going to necessarily shame you. I'm simply going to say you're wrong. Like, they are so different now. And there is a reason for smart, intellectual, mature, and quote, normal people to find experiences that they will enjoy. And sorry, like, nerdy is normal now, right? Like, nerdy is the norm.
That's
so if you're sitting there being like, that's
anymore.
something for nerds, it's like, okay, bro, like try to
so
maintain a conversation. Well,
so
try to
beer.
make right. Yeah, everything's become
so
nerdified.
Music.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
is movies. So are books. Like,
but
so
like,
is the
good
internet.
luck. I was gonna say, good luck having a conversation with your, like, 12-year-old niece, because she's probably into Fortnite. And if you were to, like, talk to her about Fortnite, you'd be like the coolest uncle in the world. If you were to sit there and be like, Fortnite's stupid, she's gonna hate you. So, like, be more open-minded about what is actually interesting and cool. There's reasons why people like the things they like, and I would be just as a-hole if I were to say that about sports. Like, only idiots and jocks like sports. Like, no, I know plenty of awesome, cool people I would consider nerdy folk who are smart, clever, witty, charming people who are, like, into sports. And so, yeah, like, and they have as many good reasons to be into sports as I do to be into tabletop RPGs and anime. Right?
Exactly.
Like, so,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So it's just like, be like, I don't know. There's definitely some, like, we all got some work to do, folks. So on that note, let's wrap it up. And, you know, I'll go ahead and say next week we're going to take this notion forward and then say, okay, you're sold. You're not a gamer. You're not into gaming right now, but you're like, you know what? You guys have convinced me. What's the next step? How do you go about learning games? And if you are a gamer, we're going to talk about how do you go about teaching games? You've got them on the hook. You got them sold. Where do you start? Because it's a huge idea, and we're probably not going to be able to cover it in the hour that we normally reserve for these things. So stay tuned and listen to that. Termite, where can the good listeners, like, keep the mics hot or keep the speakers hot with our content?
Tell us all about your new obsession with The Legend of Zelda over at 80bitpodsmash.com. 80bitpodsmash.com is our landing website where we have links to all of our social media platforms and our Discord server, as well as our Twitch channel with which you can engage us in all of these conversations. You can talk, ask questions, and feel free to private message any of us on any of those platforms. You can also email us. There are links to all of that stuff. However you want to approach our community and approach us, it's whatever flavor you would like. It's all there, as well as if you are coming by way of our audio on YouTube or you see us on Twitch and you want to know what other audio platforms we're on, you can find links to Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and our RSS feed that you can throw into any third-party app of your choice. New episodes launch weekly at midnight on Mondays every single week. We have yet to miss a Monday. We may have missed the midnight deadline a couple of times, but we'll always have a show on Monday, and you can always stay tuned to our social media if the schedule has to change. And with that, what do we got?
We'll just see you next week.
All right, we will continue the series next week.